Hope you're enjoying our day today. I want to welcome you into and thank you so much for joining us here on America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula and America's Medicare Associates, Nolan Baker and Scott Kirshner, and myself. My name is Chris Swan. Here's how you reach out, 419-794-3030. That's 419-794-3030, online at americasretirementheadquarters.com. On today's show, should gold be a part of your retirement plan as a hedge against inflation? Are you taking advantage of the free money in your 401k? And happy Mother's Day. We're going to hear from a Shark Tank investor who tells us his favorite financial advice his mom gave him. All this and more. But first, got to check in with the guys. Once again, Nolan is not with us, but I do have Scott Kirshner as always, and Chaz Price is back on the show. So, gentlemen, glad to be with you. How are we doing today?
Well, we're doing very, very well. Chaz, thanks again for joining. I know it's been kind of crazy. Nolan's been, like you said, Chris, a couple of weeks ago, Nolan's been having layovers here in his hometown between all these trips. So good for him. But, the nice thing is Chaz and I had the opportunity last week to actually make a trip down to West Palm Beach and learned a lot from the seminars down there. And
tan's starting to wear off, so I got to get back out. Got to get back down.
Got to get back out, and the weather's actually looking like it's going to allow the sun tanning to come back in. But no, we're excited and anxious about another show and ready to get going. How you doing, Chris? You doing well?
I'm doing well. Yeah. Glad to be with you guys as well. I was and share on the insight that you're giving the listeners. I take a little information for myself, so it's a dual purpose thing. But let's go ahead and dive right in. There was an article on bankrate.com that talked about the most popular investing trends right now, and it listed inflation protection at the top. It says that a lot of people have turned to gold as a hedge against rising prices. So what do you think about that? Do you agree? And if so, how do you go about including gold in a retirement plan?
Well, you know what, Chaz? I'm going to throw this to you, but first, gold. Who doesn't love gold?
I love gold.
Love gold. Donald Trump, he loved gold, didn't he? He was the golden boy, I guess. But he loved gold. But no, I look back at, I've got some numbers here from back when 20 years ago, and this is kind of staggering to me. Some of these numbers. But if you look at the price of gold 20 years ago, back in 2021, 21 years ago, you could get gold for $277 an ounce. And I looked at the report, and today it's $18.95 an ounce. Mm-hmm. A $10,000 investment would have gotten you $75,000 worth today. So that's really a nice increase. Mm-hmm. But is gold right for everybody?
Yeah. Well, I would just first point out that we did a webinar on gold and precious metal investing. We actually talked about it at our last economic summit. So if that is of interest to you, you can actually text our text line at 419-909-3828. Text the word gold, and you can actually get the webinar that I did on it a few months ago. But I think the answer is yes. I think in moderation, like everything, a little bit is probably just enough. I mean, gold, other commodities, we refer to gold and precious metals as hard commodities. There's soft commodities like agricultural products, oil and natural gas. You definitely want to have some of those type of investments in your portfolio. They do a good job of diversifying, giving you a lot of different exposure to different investment assets and different investment asset classes is going to help overall reduce the volatility. But, when you're talking about actually investing into gold, that's where the problem comes in, right? Like, where are you going to store it? There's issues with storage. There's issues with, bartering or selling or buying. Where do you go? Who do you go to? Who do you trust? Mm-hmm. And so there's a couple different ways. You can obviously go to an exchange, somebody that buys and sells gold. There's probably the easiest way that you could include gold and precious metals into your portfolio would be buying the stocks that actually bring gold out of the ground and refine it. And then there is also probably the biggest investment in gold and precious metals is an ETF. We don't typically talk about individual trades or symbols or investments, but the biggest one actually holds gold bullion in its storage facility somewhere in Fort Knox or wherever it is. But you can actually participate in the value and the upside of gold by investing into an exchange-traded fund that owns gold bullion. So,
Chaz, that reminds me back when the gold price is really low, and when I was working in a previous life. I know the big talk was about gold. It was like, my gosh, gold prices are so low. You have an opportunity to actually invest and buy and get into gold. One of the things that I did was what you just mentioned. I made sure that some of the companies, the mining companies, I was making sure that I was investing in some of those, because to actually go out and buy a physical bar of gold, I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah.
I've got no. Where am I going to put that? You know,
How do you spend that?
Yeah, how do you spend
that
that?
to the grocery store?
Yeah. But I made sure, and that was a big thing back then, back in the early 2000s, where I made sure that where I was investing was in the mining of the precious metals and that.
Yeah.
And I like what you said, diversification. I mean, this is just one of the pieces of the pie. You know, it's not the whole pie, but it's one of the pieces of the pie.
And here's the thing too with performance. I know you have some good figures there, Scott. You know, I was going back and looking at some numbers in the last 20 years. Gold, or that ETF, the most common way to buy into gold, was up in the last 20 years about 13%.
Wow.
Whereas the S&P 500, you know, the market itself is up over 250. So the issue is that gold, precious metals, commodities, they do often tend to perform better when, you know, the traditional stocks and bonds, those more traditional investments, are not performing. But that doesn't happen very often. You know, maybe 1 out of every 4 or 5 years is the market down traditionally.
Sure.
And so the market is traditionally up. Owning the traditional stocks and bonds is going to traditionally perform better than an investment that sometimes performs at its best when, you know, the markets and the economies are at its worst.
You know, I remember back when all of the low prices and the buy, because obviously, you know, the whole philosophy with proper investing is we buy low, we sell high, right? And I remember that they were also talking not only about gold, but they were talking about silver. And silver obviously was much more affordable. And, you know, we've got more places to store silver because it's, you know, you can get it in smaller physical, smaller pieces of silver and that. But it wasn't nearly the cost of gold, but it still has had some significant increases, and it holds its value. I'm assuming that would all be classified under the precious metals and you know, that kind of investment.
Yeah, gold and precious metals, tin, iron, platinum, nickel, silver. I think those are all components and raw materials that go into the semiconducters as well.
Okay.
So, and you know, the chips that go into everything electronic that you see in the studio today, your cars, appliances. So, you know, that's one of the reasons why gold and precious metals do start to perform well when we have inflationary pressure. We're seeing a lot of inflation for that very reason, you know, shortage on chips. And as the price of those things go up, so does the demand for the raw materials that go into making them. And so, again, it is traditionally a good investment during inflationary periods of time, and that's why it is considered a good inflation hedge. As part of a diversified portfolio, you know, of course, we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket, but sprinkle a little here, you know, maybe even a little bit into, you know, the agricultural products, maybe a little oil, you know, and kind of just diversify it out.
You know, when we talk about diversification, I've used the analogy before of like a stool at a bar or whatever, you know, and we've all had our share of those chairs where we sit in them and the legs are a little wobbly. So what do? You know, at the restaurant, they'll prop it up with the sugar packets or whatever. But more often than not, you'll lean on the ones that aren't, you know, the short end that aren't wobbly. It's the same sort of thing when it comes to your retirement strategy, especially if you have diversified, if you have multiple legs when it comes to your retirement plan. If something is not being favorable, if the market is volatile and it's coming up a little short, you don't want to lean on that. Obviously, this is where things like, you know, having gold potentially as part of your retirement strategy or different assets to lean on in those times. And, you know, if you're not diversified and you just have a one-legged stool, well, what happens when that's wobbly? You fall down. That's not what you want when it comes to your retirement. You want that diversification, whether it does include gold or not. Again, As Chaz pointed out, they did a recent webinar about that. And if you want more information about that, if you want access to that webinar, it's real easy. You text the word gold to 419-909-3828. They'll be happy to send that out to you. Or if you want to start crafting a more comprehensive strategy, all-encompassing, pick up the phone, give a call to America's Retirement Headquarters, 419-794-3030. That's 419-794-3030, or online at americasretirementheadquarters.com. What percentage of your income do you contribute to a 401k? Recent study in Vanguard said a third of Americans, they don't even contribute enough to get the company match, which means that they don't realize that they're missing out on free money. I know you guys offer complementary services like a portfolio x-ray or review. Is there a similar review that you guys can do on a 401k or another retirement account to make sure that people are getting the most out of it?
Well, once again, Chaz, this is kind of right up your wheelhouse. But, there's a lot of people out there that have 401ks and has contributed. I know back when I first started, in my working career 40 some odd years ago, one of the things was, you got to invest in the 401ks. And I was told back then, one of the more important things to do is take any of the money that your employer is going to give you. It's free money. Why would you not take it? And preparing for the show, I was reading an article earlier, and it was kind of funny. It goes through a scenario. It's like, okay, so let's say you're walking down the street and you find $5 laying on the ground. What are you going to do?
Step over that, or
no? You're going to pick it up, right?
I mean,
you're going to look around and you're going to say, hey, did anybody see me pick that up? And maybe someone, if nobody's around, you're going to pick it up and it's going to go in your pocket, right?
Right.
And that reminds me of a story. I was at Kent State with my daughter, and after one of her weekend games, I took her out to dinner, and we're walking from one side of the street to the other, and I see this bill laying on the floor or on the ground, and I go, hey sis, look, and she looks down, and it's kind of crumbled up, folded up, and I reach over and pick it up. It's a $100 bill.
Wow.
And we look around, and I did. I looked around, and I'm like, this is unfortunate. Somebody dropped a $100 bill. They don't even know they did this. And, a bunch of college kids, and $100 to them is a lot. And the first thing my daughter did was she stuck her hand out. I'm like, yeah, right. That's not going to happen. Yeah, we're going to use it to pay for your dinner, and you might be able to have what's left over. But if you think about that, picking up the $5, not taking advantage of the money that your employer is going to give you with the contribution is really like throwing money away. It's free money.
Mm-hmm.
So in the article, it said, okay, so if you maximize your contribution, so you take that $5 bill and you put it on the ground. Now there's two $5 bills down there, and you pick them both up, and now you've got $10 in your pocket.
Yeah.
Well, why would you not take advantage of the money, the free money that your employer is going to give you?
Right, the match.
The match, exactly. Why don't you go through and explain a little bit how that match works?
Yeah, so as Scott was describing, in order to get that $5 off the ground, you have to put your $5 down first.
Right.
But as soon as you do that, you can pick up the $5, and that kind of describes the process of a 401k match, which is it's the employer's contribution in your retirement success. They're taking a lot of time, energy, and actually that's one of the main lines of business that I support here at the Retirement Guys is setting up 401ks for medium to large employers, and that's the important part of it is that they're taking their own money to help you participate and to be successful in retirement. So why wouldn't you take advantage of that?
Sure.
It's exactly the case. The question is why? Really, what is the reasoning why? And I think sometimes people think that a 3% match or even a 6% match is, at the end of the day, kind of underwhelming. It's like, it's 3%. What is that actually worth to me? But when you look at it in terms of over a 30-year period of time, on a $45,000 salary, a 3% contribution over 30 years is, 6 figures.
Yeah,
approaching
exactly.
$200,000, $150,000 to $200,000. That's a big chunk of your retirement for sure. So I think that would just be the takeaway that I would have from that segment is, even though it's a 3% contribution, which may not sound like a lot of money, you really have to look at it in terms of the compounding interest, the 30 years that goes along with it, from now until the time you retire, and then take a look at what that dollar amount is and what sort of impact that's going to make on your retirement.
What do you typically see? I know if I remember correctly back in the day, it was up to a 6%. So if I put in 6, the employer would match up to 3% of the 6. But I had to at least put that amount in order
Right.
to get the full match.
Yeah.
Do you see, is that the industry standard, or do you see employers matching dollar for dollar? I mean, what do you typically see with these 401k matches?
Yeah, it's typically dollar for dollar up to the first 3%, and then maybe 50% for the next 3 or something like that. But it's really all they're really different. Each plan is different. You can make it as attractive as you want. It just really comes down to what sort of features and benefits and job perks are you going to offer to attract the talent that you need.
Is there a maximum amount an employer can contribute for an individual employee?
Yeah. So with the 401k plan, primarily it is a deferral program. So the contribution that the employee makes maxes out at $20,500 this year.
Okay.
And then you can make, if you're over 50 years young, you can make an extra $6,500 contribution. So you can get in there up to $27,000. In 2022, and these numbers are always indexed, but you can actually, as an employer, as part of a profit sharing plan or a match, make the total contribution into that plan $62,000. So, I mean, it's one of the best savings vehicles that you could possibly have in terms of getting a lot of money into a plan in a relatively short period of time.
Well, that's really kind of what it is. It's kind of a forced savings.
Yeah.
I mean, those numbers, and we've talked about this in previous shows, the staggering savings rates today. I mean, people just don't save money. A lot of people live paycheck to paycheck, and they're just not saving money. This is a way to actually force someone to kind of put money away, knowing that at retirement time, they're going to have decisions they're going to have to make as far as investing that money. And that's where you come into play, is taking that lump sum rollover money and doing something with it. But, if you're not putting the money in there, there's nothing to roll. There's nothing in there. And you don't have to.
The number one thing that we do know, we do study time after time, and we know that one of the main concerns and fears of people that they have going into retirement is running out of money. But yet, as this article talks about, there's still some sort of trepidation in terms of contributing to these plans or maxing them out. It only almost always makes sense, even from a taxability standpoint, where when you put in $20,000 and your income now, your taxable income is reduced dollar for dollar by that $20,000. You may not even see any real after-tax hit to your income at all, because you're being taxed on less, and the money that you would normally pay in tax stays in your account or stays in your paycheck. And so it's important that you really do take advantage of the resources. If the plan offers you an opportunity to talk with an advisor, take it. Have them run through a retirement roadmap. We do those here at the office for free. It's complementary as part of our process of working with small business owners and their employees. And we'll let you know how much we think you need to save for retirement. We'll talk about ways to help you budget. If you really don't know how you're going to make it work, we can look at a budget. We can even help you implement things such as one of the carriers that we use, John Hancock, offers an automatic 1% increase that you can just check the box, and each year you don't have to think about it. You don't have to fill out any forms. It's going to add an extra 1% to your 401k. That alone is going to, almost double your investable assets, hypothetically based on a 5% rate of return over 3 years or 30 years. You're going to have almost double in that plan doing that.
Chaz, you brought up a really good point that I didn't think about. And I remember this back in the day. You have that advisor that comes in and meets with all of the employees in the group, right? And then you get all this packet of paper, and it says, okay, here, fill us out and bring it back.
Yeah, that's where we lose them.
I had no idea what. Back in the day, I was in my, mid to early 20s and late 20s. I had no idea what I was looking at. I mean, that wasn't my lane. I was not in that investment lane. So then you have to reach out to this guy or gal or whoever it may be and say, what do you suggest? And it's like, well, I'm not going to suggest anything. Here's your options. You need to decide what you want to do. And I think with the 401ks, that's really lacking.
Yeah.
I mean, that part of it, that advice, you lose the Chaz Price wow factor by not having that person go through it with you on a annual basis.
Yeah.
And I know you can schedule appointments and that, but the last thing a lot of these guys want to do is sit down and talk to someone who doesn't have any idea what they're doing and is putting in 2% instead of their 6%.
Yeah. Making it fun, streamlining it, focusing on the goal. I think that's where a lot of younger advisors fall short, is where experienced advisors like us, 20 years in the business, you see people start to glaze over their eyes in these meetings.
Absolutely.
My presentation has a South Park video in it for fun. It's completely kid friendly, but there's just you got to keep people engaged. You've got to basically speak to their interests and
Sure.
Why are you investing in this plan? It's not so that you can have a couple $100,000 in there. It's so you don't ever have to shovel another thing in April like we had. Maybe it's traveling. Maybe you want to be a semi-professional babysitter. Whatever that is, that plan that you have, that's how you get people to buy into saving. The other point I would make is that for young folks, younger individuals, I talked to a girl today, and she's 30, and she's like, I'm not really, interested that much. It's just, it's what's being offered, so I'm going to go ahead and put in the minimum.
Right.
But the reality is that she has so much more earnings potential than you or I, in our 50s, approaching or whatnot, than somebody in their 30s. It would be a small amount of money that she would need to set aside that would make a huge difference because of the eighth wonder of the world, which is compounding interest. Albert Einstein said that, and I think he's right. Just a little bit of money is going to be much more powerful over a longer period of time than, let's say, if she started saving double or triple the amount at age 50 and really tried to catch up. There's no way.
Well, the important thing is to do something.
Right.
To sit on the sidelines and do nothing isn't going to help you, but do something and start out small. Figure it out. As you grow, your income grows and you can afford more, then that's when you start making your changes. And sitting down with an advisor like yourself is very important to understand what's available, what can I do. It's kind of like what I said earlier about gold.
Yeah.
I made sure, and I asked the questions because I heard the talk, because I'm around people that are in the business. Otherwise, I'd have had no idea. But, hey, what should I be doing with gold? And they said, hey, make sure you're investing in the companies that are mining it. I would have had no idea had some advisor not sat down and talked with me. I made sure that I made changes to my 401k distributions to make sure that I covered all of that.
Yeah.
So, it's important to make sure that you're taking advantage of free money. I mean, who doesn't like free money? I know I do. My daughter sure did. She wanted free money. But take advantage of the free money, right? Chris, I don't know if I'm assuming that you guys have 401ks. What is your thoughts on this? Because you're a younger guy that's in, your working prime years. And what's your thoughts on this?
Well, this is kind of jumping ahead to a topic we're going to talk about a little later on in the show with Mother's Day. And I remember the first bit of advice I got when I turned 16. I got my first job. It was bussing tables, so it wasn't relevant at the time. But my mom said, you're going to have a job one day, and you're going to they're going to have a 401k, and there's going to be a company match. Take advantage of that. Put all the money you can in there, and then don't touch it until you retire. So very valuable information. That has held true with me for all of these years. And correct me if I'm wrong here. 401ks, they really came into prominence kind of at the same time as pensions were going by the wayside. You don't really see those these days. And so it's kind of become the burden, not the burden, the onus has been put on the employee to take care of their own pension. And the employer match is kind of a way to offset not providing that pension anymore. Is that a fair assessment?
I would say that's pretty accurate. The amount of liability that you take on when you have a pension plan with hundreds of possibly thousands of people, varying longevities, life expectancies, market volatility, the actuarial science, that's actually an industry, that these individuals spend trying to figure out how much to fund these plans with. And unfortunately, a lot of 401k or a lot of pension plans are still underwater, just as a result of the '08, '09, Great Recession. And so if you have a pension plan, you're one of the lucky few. A lot of them, for that very reason, are going by the wayside. To your point, Chris, that they're just basically offloading that responsibility from the company onto the employee, and taking that pressure off the employer to have to make these defined contributions to this plan to provide that benefit. It's just a simpler, more cost-effective. Definitely, it has its advantages and disadvantages, like anything else. But I think most people would agree, if you had the choice to compare, if you had the choice to take Social Security as a lump sum and do something with it on your own, or take the monthly payments, I mean, most people would appreciate the stability that a pension payment like that can provide.
Sure.
Which doesn't mean that you can't go out and buy one on your own. It's just, it's typically not an option that you would have inside of a 401k until you retired, and then you could roll it over. But yeah, I agree. Especially then on Social Security's topic, if Social Security you're expecting that to be your only source of income in retirement, you're in trouble. It may not even be in its exact same form by the time you get there, and if that's going to usually replace about 30 to 40% of your actual income. Where's the other 60% come from? Most people would say they could retire with their income is going to be less in retirement, but possibly. But do you really want that?
Right.
Do you want your income to go down in retirement? Sure, you could tighten up the belt a lot, and sure you could make it, but is that what you want to do? So,
right.
Saving your 401k.
Again, it's important to think about that. Go ahead and plan for the future. A lot of people, like you said earlier, 3% doesn't seem like a lot, but over the course of the 30, 40 years you're going to be working, it really does add up. And it's going to make a pretty considerable difference when it comes to your overall retirement. So if you're, again, to echo my mother, if your employer offers that employee match, by all means, take advantage of that. But you do need something a little bit more than beyond what my mom just said. Start crafting a retirement plan. Pick up the phone. Schedule a time to speak with America's Retirement Headquarters. 419-794-3030 is the number. Once again, 419-794-3030, or go online to americasretirementheadquarters.com. We're going to step away for just a minute, take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about advice from mothers in our lives, not just my mom, but other mothers. And then we're going to speak with Jennifer Mattis in our Committed to the 419 segment. That conversation happens after this.